Good afternoon to our NOIAW members and audience. I'm glad you all could join us. I'm NOIAW member Giovanna di Biccari. Today we have Marianna Gatto, Executive Director, Historian of the Italian American Museum of Los Angeles, who's going to give us an inside peek of the museum, some highlights, and discuss the institution's response to COVID-19. Hi, Marianna, how are you?
Hi there, how are you?
I'm great.
Well, thank you.
How's the weather in LA?
It's beautiful. It's hot right now.
Oh, really?
And nobody wants to be indoors.
Okay. Well, you have a reason to get out. You know, you're supposed to get that exercise and that fresh air, though.
Yes, vitamin D, right?
That's right. So, Mariana, let's dive in. Tell us about the Italian American Museum of Los Angeles and how it started.
So the Italian American Museum of Los Angeles, or IMLA, is located in downtown Los Angeles in one of the oldest remaining buildings from the city's historic Italian enclave, a building known as the Italian Hall, which was constructed in 1908 to serve as a community gathering place. Many people aren't aware that Los Angeles actually has a sizable Italian American population.
Who knew? I didn't know.
The nation's fifth largest, in fact. Okay. And that the Italian presence here actually spans 2 centuries to the 1820s. You know, soon after the city's founding. And just to kind of give you some context, that's about 4 decades before the Civil War, before Italy was even a country. And the museum showcases this history and the contributions that Italian Americans have made to the region and to the nation. We also present a number of temporary exhibitions and cultural educational programming, and have a pretty extensive archive. One of the greatest attributes of the museum, in my opinion, is its location. We're located at a major tourist destination, a site that draws about 2 million visitors annually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 300,000 of which are students. And this is one of the ways in which the museum is unique. You know, many of our visitors don't enter the museum kind of having sought it out because admission is free. There's kind of an incentive to wander in and see what we have to offer.
So it's not typically it's not really a destination for most people visiting LA. It's not on their destination list. They just happen to stumble upon it and they're like, oh, who knew?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would say like the site itself, the larger site, is more of a destination than the museum. I mean, of course, we were hoping to change that, but you know, many people think of you know, ethnic institutions in a way that, you know, they would only really be relevant to people of that ethnic group, but we're much more relevant, I think, than that, and we aim to be. In fact, you know, the diversity of our visitors really guides our programming. Only about 15% of our visitors are of Italian extraction. Okay. And so we approach our subject matter in, you know, with the assumption that, you know, visitors probably don't have much background in Italian American history. And we present content in a manner that really kind of engenders a sense of shared experiences among our visitors.
So who would you say if only 15% are Italian American that come and visit the museum, have you guys done any research to see who the next biggest population is?
The next largest, yes, the next largest group would be Latinos. So, you know, Americans of, you know, Latin American descent, Spanish speaking, non-Spanish speaking.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And how'd you get involved, Mariana?
Oh gosh. Well, my connection with the project began in the mid-90s when I was serving on the board of a local Italian American organization. And some of my fellow board members were involved in an effort that was underway to restore and secure use of the Italian Hall. Okay. Which, you know, is where the museum is located. And the Italian community had ceased to use the building in the 1950s. Oh, wow. And in the decades that followed, it basically languished. It was pretty much forgotten.
Do you think they stopped using it because of the wars and the finances needed to upkeep it, or?
It's a little bit more complex than that. Basically, you know, the Italian community had started to kind of move out of downtown. But beyond that, the state of California purchased the building and several others in the area at that time to preserve them.
Wow, great news.
Yeah, because, so much of Los Angeles has fallen to the wrecking ball. That's what, for much of our history, what we've been particularly good at is destroying things. And so the state purchased this building and several others in the area to preserve them, but they never really had the money to maintain them.
Okay.
And so in the 90s, the building was proposed to be redeveloped in a way that would forever erase its Italian history. So the community kind of reinserted itself. And that was really what captured my attention. Growing up in Los Angeles, unlike places like New York or Boston, where Italian American history and, Italian Americans are everywhere, in Los Angeles, it's much more muted. The Italian American history was never very well documented, at least when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And so a couple weeks later, after learning about the building, I walked through it, and, again, it was this kind of dusty, dilapidated structure.
Yes.
But there was something very special about it that just really I connected with instantly.
I also find it fascinating that you were there before it was born. I mean, the Italian Hall was there, sure, but that you grew with it. I find that fascinating. What a great story. And now you're a storyteller, basically. Yeah. You're saying that so many stories have been lost since the culture, the Italian population moved out. Nobody really documented anything. Well, there you are.
Yeah, that's kind of been the really the heart of this project, is making sure that these stories are not lost, and the first time I walked into the building, I kind of said, I want to be the director of this place.
And there, that's how you manifest things. Hey,
there you go. But, I just kind of imagined it as a museum. Mm-hmm. But, fast forward to about a decade later and careers later, in 2005, I was hired as a curator of history, education, and museums for the city of LA, the department that oversees the site where the museum is now located. Okay. And so I started working again with the foundation that was still trying to create, make the museum a reality, right. And but was facing a lot of roadblocks. And we led an advocacy campaign in 2007 that resulted in the allocation of some, substantial public funds to kind of address, the restoration needs of the building.
Well, Mariana, you have a lot of Italian American actors there. I'm sure they kind of gave some pocket change over, or I hope they did, I mean, we've had a lot of Italian American actors in LA, not just the ones that we can name off the top of our heads, like let's say Al Pacino,
mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we're definitely hoping to make that more of the case.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Maybe you have to send them some personal invitations, handwritten, personal, and they'll feel like it's personal.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
All right. So tell me something. What do you think might be the most surprising feature inside the museum? What are people going to be most surprised when they walk up, they're walking on the street, hey, let's look at this museum here. And then they're surprised.
Never knew they... Well, I think, people have such varied interests. I mean, I know we have some images of the museum that might be, kind of helpful to illustrate, but, we have visitors from 9 to 99 years old. And a lot of students, we utilize technology to, bring history to life, to engage our visitors. Mm-hmm. Our permanent exhibition is actually divided into, 7 separate exhibitions, and there's a few different components of the permanent exhibition. Mm-hmm. There's large glass screens that kind of present an overview of each exhibition. And then, of course, there's like artifact cases that contain, artifacts that illustrate each exhibit. Attached to those cases are tablets that contain the complete exhibitions. Okay. And that's a much more, in-depth, the much more in-depth story for each. I can tell you, 2 of the most photographed items in the museum are a Captain America shield, which was used in the film Captain America Civil War, which was, of course,
love the movie.
Yeah, a film directed by Joe and Anthony Russo.
Great.
And then we also have a gown or a robe belonging to Lady Gaga that was designed for her by Donatella Versace.
Oh, wow.
So those are, those are the objects I would say people really love.
Are you staying there after hours just to try the robe on and give yourself a tour? Might want to sneak out.
Not yet. No.
I'm giving you ideas, bad ideas, I know.
But sometimes, it is a little bit surreal, when you, when we bring these new items into the museum. We had an exhibition not long ago that included, one of the most valuable pieces of art that we've ever exhibited. And so there is a little bit of that, not everybody gets to experience that. And
sure.
Yeah.
I find that, yeah, I'm kind of astonished that there is a Italian-American museum in LA, first of all, because it never even crossed my mind. I always think New York, New York, New York. And that's it really, but this is great. I love how you guys have this exhibition here, and so many surprising artifacts there too. So
absolutely.
Any other highlights about of the museum or exhibitions, or give us a takeaway of something you've seen a kid just drop his jaw about?
Well, I would say, one thing that's not necessarily children, but many people aren't aware that the wine industry of California actually began in Los Angeles. Los Angeles was once the winemaking capital of the state, and it, winemaking was really centered right next to the museum. So we have an exhibition that examines that. One of our most popular exhibitions, as I mentioned, our permanent exhibition is also accessible online, so we can kind of track how long people are remain with the content. One of our most popular exhibitions, the most popular, examines anti-Italianism and the history of anti-Italianism in the United States. So, everything from, the laws that were passed to prohibit immigration or to reduce immigration of Italians to this country, to some of the violence that Italian Americans experienced, and the violations of Italian American civil liberties during World War II. What we find is that people, of diverse origins kind of, take a moment and say like, well, hey, this is very similar to my grandmother's experience, or I didn't know that Italian Americans experienced that. And that's, one of the more rewarding parts of my position.
I will say that, just the other day, you just reminded me, Mariana, just the other day, I happened to see something on social media showing detained Italians and Italian Americans because it was happening during one of the world wars. And I just thought, gosh, you don't see enough of that. You see, not that you want to see a lot of that, but it kind of serves a purpose to remind you, hey, there were people being, racial about everything and every culture included.
So, we were there yesterday, unless we forget. And exactly. This exhibition actually speaks to that experience specifically. The Italians of California were, largely affected by those, those orders, evacuation orders, and they, figured prominently among those who were interned. And so we document some of those stories in the museum.
Do you think that's why, you're saying that next door there was winemaking? Do you think that's why so many Italians migrated to LA, because they knew the weather was good for growing grapes? Or was there?
In fact, so like a lot of the early Italian settlers came to the region because of agricultural opportunities, and they are as I mentioned, a driving force behind the development of the California wine industry, and also making California the agricultural giant that it is today. Yeah. So, it's surprising that, Los Angeles was more of like a remote outpost at that time. It was a lot smaller than places like New York. But definitely, the weather, if you had your choice between being in a more cramped city or being in a place that more resembled Italy, that was definitely one of the reasons why a lot of Italians came here.
Yeah.
especially, during, post-World War II. That was, when my family arrived in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Where did your family arrive from?
So the Sicilian side entered through New Orleans.
Okay.
And they were, they
greeted with
what's that?
and a parade. I just find it funny, like, oh, we'll come through New Orleans.
Yeah, they came through Louisiana and worked in the, in the fields for, a while before working their way west to Colorado. And, a lot of people don't realize that there's a huge Italian population in Colorado. And so that's where my grandparents met and my dad was born. And then we came out here. Well, they came out here after World War II.
Very good. All right. So, this pandemic is turning many aspects of our lives upside down, including how the public enjoys cultural institutions and the arts. From your point of view, how is this pandemic influencing the museums and the way in which people access cultural institutions and the arts?
Well, the economic impact of the pandemic on America's nonprofit art sector, the financial losses to date are projected to be about 3.2 billion with a B.
Yeah.
And, museums across the nation are collectively losing about 33 million a day.
Wow. Gosh,
Yeah.
That was that's a significant number. I didn't know it was greatly.
And, to add a little bit more to that, about a third of US museums are stating that they're going to be unable to reopen. So what we have, unfolding before us right now is really a tragedy that requires intervention.
Yes.
Museums like the restaurant industry, like the small business sector really need some help right now. And, museums are public memory. They serve as repositories for history and culture. They're places of exploration, but they're also, an important economic engine. People don't realize it, but close to 400,000 people are employed in the museum sector.
Wow. Okay.
In this nation. And museums contribute 50 billion, again with a B, to the United States economy. They drive cultural tourism, and we have to recognize this symbiotic relationship. In times like this, budgets for the arts and museums are slashed because they're deemed non-essential. And I think many in the profession, many educators as well, will say that, they beg to differ. But, I would say also, like, we have to ask ourselves, what would this last 6 weeks have been like for us without access to music or the arts?
Right.
It would have been a lot bleaker than it was. But to answer the second half of your question, the IMLA responded to the shutdown by increasing our digital content and immersive experiences. Since the stay-at-home orders were issued, we introduced a new virtual exhibition, a virtual tour. We also published 2 curricula for educators, many of whom are kind of struggling to make that transition from teaching and learning at home. One of the projects we've been working on for the past couple of years is bringing our collection online. Many people aren't aware that most museums only showcase maybe 1% of their collection at any given time, and these collections are like repositories of there's lots of wealth of knowledge, and to enable people to access them really makes sense. And so we've also been bringing our collection more online.
Yes.
But, and on that note, we've used our collection a bit to kind of get people talking and laughing. Many people are talking about the, how they're lamenting not being able to go to the salon, their hair is every which way. Right. We've selected some images from our collection of, hairdos from years past to kind of post to them. And people have really enjoyed the distraction.
Oh, I like it. Though you call it a repository of facts and history, it is, and watching it online is great too, but there's something enjoyable about going to a museum. I just feel like time stands still, and I can bring my 9-year-old and I'm at peace, everything's slowed down. She's learning. I mean, if you can't travel, then go to a museum. I feel like that kind of brings it to you, and it gives me the impression that she's learning on a deeper level than just reading a book on
Absolutely.
history. And I'm not discrediting a book on history, but she's
Absolutely.
like a sponge. You're so
Absolutely.
good at it.
You know, I mean, I often say that, like, we are very much, you know, clearly we endorse online content and programming. We already have a tremendous online presence. You know, we love it when online virtual programming can enable people who otherwise would not have access to arts and culture specific experiences to, you know, participate.
Right.
But there's no, you know, there's really no substitute for experiencing, you know, just like the glory of an orchestra, you know, in person. And, you know, so we recognize that as well.
You know, I'd like to just fly over there when you guys reopen. Just
I would love for you to. Yeah, bring your daughter.
well, oh, she's a handful. I might just leave her with you. But
we've got lots of stuff to keep her busy.
I think she would enjoy it. You know, I visited your website and I looked and I just thought, wow, I am so impressed. And I do think my 9-year-old would enjoy it, but there's also the element of surprise. To me, you know, going there and visiting it in person, I feel like I would just be surprised over and over seeing these items in person and reading the history all over again, as well as you never know who you're going to run into. I mean, you're in LA and there's a million actors and so many of them Italian American actors. Who knows, one day they're going to just decide, I need to go in there. I need to, you know, feel my roots again, I guess.
Our doors are open and we're happy to, you know, serve as vehicles for the discovery of their ancestry, as we are for, you know, our other visitors as well.
All right. All right. So going back to the Italian American Museum of LA, how is your museum in particular adjusting to this new normal? For example, is the pandemic affecting the museum and its staff, or do you feel like there's going to be some challenges just to get back to normalcy?
Yes, yes, and yes. You know, since the state, you know, the IMLA closed its doors on March 21st, and since then, our small but mighty staff of women has been, you know, working from home, and I'm really proud of how, you know, we've all kind of adapted to this new reality. You know, we've had to postpone or cancel a lot of events and programming, an exhibition, you know, lectures, a masterclass, a concert, as well as some critical fundraising events.
Wow.
And that's really tough for us, I won't lie. You know, I say that recognizing that people are losing their loved ones to this virus. You know, I've lost 2 friends, we've lost a few members, and, you know, so the other side of me feels rather ridiculous for, you know, complaining about, you know, programming being canceled. We're not entirely sure what the new normal in the world of museums is going to look like yet. In Los Angeles, some of the county museums are going to be opening, I think, sooner than the city museums. It's still like kind of a, you know, the information is changing every day. I can tell you that we're looking to places like Germany and other countries that are reopening their museums.
Okay.
We're also looking to professionals for, you know, their guidance as to the best practices to follow, whether it's, you know, devices to maintain social distancing, enhanced cleaning, you know, revised occupancy limits.
Sure.
We're also, you know, again, kind of going back to technology, we're in the process of creating an app that will, for our permanent exhibition, that will encourage visitors to rely on, you know, their own devices rather than touching, you know, common surfaces. I mentioned before that, you know, our permanent exhibition has lots of touch screens. So, you know, by using these apps, you can kind of, you know, eliminate some of that touching and also some of the, you know, the crowding among popular items.
Totally. So this might be the new normal. I mean, you know,
at least for the time being.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. And I don't think the audience or, you know, your audience would have a problem with that, you know, staggered entrances, stay apart for a little while, you know, the hands-free sanitizers, things like that.
Certainly. And I think so many people are anxious to kind of return to the world, you know, some more than others. You know, I think some are more cognizant that, you know, there's still a lot of benchmarks that need to be achieved before.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. Are you favorable to online events and exhibits? They seem to be more and more often popular in the last few weeks, I guess. I've noticed a lot of other places, and you just mentioned, putting more stuff online, but would you do events and exhibits online? Are you open to that?
Yeah, so I mean, we have, we already have some of our exhibitions online. We're open to events, again, like when you're providing somebody who would otherwise not have that opportunity to be enriched. We're all for that. Let's make technology, work for us.
Right.
But again, there isn't a substitute for the real, more immersive in-person experience.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a balancing act.
Okay.
And what we may do at some point in the future is, when we are able to have events again, we imagine that things like occupancy will be greatly reduced. And so maybe in addition to those who are able to experience it in person, we also broadcast it in some manner.
Okay.
Live stream, I think that's broadcast. I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
Broadcast.
I understood you.
Thank you.
Oh, we broadcast this, guys. Who? What?
Turn on the radio.
Right.
Let it warm up.
Right.
You can tell I'm a historian, right?
Right. I feel like my daughter's old computer. Just turn the computer an hour on, open it an hour early before school starts. Yeah, broadcast. Nice. Oh my gosh. No worries. Don't worry. You still look young and great. We're good.
God bless you.
So, I've got a million event ideas. If you ever need them, call me. I mean,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we hope to do, in the near future is really, kind of partner with organizations like NOIAW to kind of advance our respective missions.
right.
And we're always open to ideas. And we encourage folks to, to contact. We get lots of, I have to be careful what I say. We get some pretty interesting emails on a daily basis.
Gossip, come on.
What's that?
I said, give us some juicy gossip.
Oh, well, I think it's just part of like the museum world or, but we welcome ideas, and we always love for folks to reach out and make themselves known.
Okay. Well, if you ever, I don't know if anybody's pitched this idea to you, but I think you need to have a private party, all the Italian Americans in LA, and then I'll be there to help you out.
Well, we do something similar to that, actually. We have an event every year. It's one of our most popular, called Tastes of Italy. And it's an upscale food and wine tasting event that draws about 2,000 people at some of the best restaurants in the region. We pour 100 Italian wines. It's a great cross-section of Los Angeles, both, Italian Americans, Italophiles, and it's really our signature event. We've been doing it for 11 years now.
So it's your event, but you hold it out in the streets.
Yes.
Museum.
Yes, exactly. So it's one of our largest fundraisers. We also do a celebrity golf tournament. So we do lots of events, concerts, film screenings, lectures, you name it, large and small. We've done, but again, we're always open to more ideas. So don't, yes.
Private dining party. Italian American actors and producers. I'll be there, and we'll wear matching dresses, so we won't be lost. Okay, I'll be able to find you.
All righty. Well, it sounds like I might have another organizer willing to volunteer her time.
I'm a great daydreamer.
You'll be spending more time in Los Angeles. DC is only 4 hours away.
That's true. I can hop on a plane. I've done it before. I've done it at a moment's notice before, so don't tempt me.
Maybe we should also do a NOIAW meetup in Los Angeles.
That would be amazing. And then maybe you could just open a chapter over there. I mean, because obviously you don't have enough things to do.
There you have it.
put more stuff on your plate. And there you have it. Yes.
Well, I think there would be a lot of Italian American women in Los Angeles who, you know, in the greater Los Angeles area who, you know,
yes,
would be interested.
Definitely. And if not, if they're in New York or DC, wherever, I mean, why wouldn't they come out and fly there for one weekend? It's like, oh, their annual party.
Who doesn't want to, you know, spend some time in Los Angeles? The museum's actually located across the street from a major transportation hub, so you don't even have to drive.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, we're across from Union Station. So, you know, there's something like, I think 600,000 people who pass through Union Station every day or before. You know, you just hop on a train.
I like it. I might be there. Surprise. Is this awkward, Mariana?
Not at all. Be careful. We're going to put you to work. Okay. Like I said, we're a small but mighty team of women, and the word can't and no is not in our vocabulary.
Not exist. I like that. That is my attitude. I like that style. And like I said, like you said, you want to do something with NOIAW, we're all for it. Definitely. Okay. Definitely. So let me ask you, we have someone has a question. Eileen Condens that asks, can you recommend any organizations that are offering best practices training on presenting truly engaging online events?
Oof, that's a tough question. Yeah, you know, off the top of my head, I cannot. My suggestion would be, you know, see what events you find engaging.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe model what you do after, you know, what you find to be the best, you know, the best practices that they're following, some of the best techniques for, you know, soliciting response, that sort of thing.
I like it. It's a very, it's a pleasant example of what you could do. You know, it's an easy example. You know, follow whoever you like, see what they're doing. I like it.
And borrow from it a little bit.
Borrow, that's right. It's not going to hurt anyone. Okay, so what is the importance? Yeah, I have a really, really passionate question here. What's the importance of the Italian American Museum of LA, not only for the Italian American community in LA, mm-hmm. and how can the community get involved with the museum, even if they're not a member?
Well, you know, the museum illustrates, you know, the diversity of experiences within the Italian diaspora, but also within the American experience. Mm-hmm. That's one of, you know, I find the most kind of rewarding parts, you know, during my day, where I'll overhear a guest say, and I probably mentioned this earlier, like, oh, I didn't know this about Italian Americans, or, you know, this is very similar to what my family experienced. And so to be able to kind of draw those parallels and create, you know, a sense of shared experience, to promote meaningful dialogue about who we are as, you know, Americans, past and present, is really an opportunity that we cherish. And, you know, you don't need to be from the region to relate to our content. Most of our visitors are not. And as I mentioned, that's, you know, really something that we're cognizant of as we're, you know, preparing our exhibitions, temporary, permanent, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I also think that, like, income disparities often prevent people from accessing arts and culture. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm proud that, you know, not only is the museum free, but we're able to promote cultural equity and inclusion through a variety of free programming. Mm-hmm. as well. And really, you know, bringing people into the arts who often think like, oh, well, you know, I need to have a PhD to visit a museum, or, you know, attending a classical concert is something that only people of a certain group can do. And we kind of, you know, we challenge that and really try to be a welcoming center, both, you know, our brick and mortar institution and, you know, through our online programming. So for, you know, those who are interested in, you know, in knowing more, you know, I encourage them to visit our website, imla.org, or connect with us, you know, on one of our social platforms.
Okay. I mean, connecting on the social platforms is easy because it kind of just feeds it to you anyway. It feeds you the information. You're on there, you're on Facebook or Twitter, wherever. and it's just sitting there on your feet anyway. So I think that's a great.
Why not use it as an opportunity to, you know, expand your knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, sometimes I look at like, gosh, you know, how much time have I spent in the last, you know, day just doing something that really didn't benefit me in any way? It's just a bunch of, you know, the scrolling addiction, and so I try to limit that.
Right. Oh, I get you.
You know, like let's substitute that with, you know, furthering my knowledge of Italian. I don't know about you, but I grew up not speaking Italian for the most part. You probably did though, because your father was an immigrant, right?
Yeah. So my father was an immigrant from Puglia, Italy. So
Bella Puglia. Puglia.
It's fascinating. Every time I go there, I feel like I'm just immersed. You can't be more immersed unless you go to Puglia, I feel like.
Yeah. We have a huge Pugliese population in Los Angeles.
Oh, really?
A lot of like the immigrants who came from like the 1920s onward.
Okay.
And so like if you go to, we have an Italian church here in Los Angeles, St. Peter's Italian Church that still does Mass in Italian. And the majority of the congregation is actually Pugliese. So it's pretty interesting. But anyway, I completely interrupted you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. We're sharing stories. This is great.
So you spoke Italian growing up, or
hold on? I'm going to get some taralli while we're sharing these stories.
There we go. Please send me some in Los Angeles.
I did grow up speaking Italian somewhat, but I still go to visit my family in Italy. So I was just there at Christmas, and then last summer I was there a year ago. And then I have my daughter at Casa Italiana in Washington, D.C. And every Sunday, well, now it's online because of the quarantine, but every Sunday she goes and she takes 3 hours of Italian class.
That's wonderful.
It's a break for me. I get to sit there and I'll read, you know, the Italian newspapers or what have you. Mm-hmm. Just to get something. Like I might be learning a little bit more Italian by accident, but at least I'm learning something.
No, and it's so important. And I really, hope to, dedicate some time to maintaining the language. I studied it in college, but there's no, comparison between growing up with it or being immersed in it. And, if you don't speak it, you lose it, and now my Spanish is actually much better than my Italian.
Yeah.
So, because I use it more frequently in Los Angeles.
I get it. But, one way to do it is find out what ancestors you might have left in Italy or family, distant cousins, sorry.
In fact, my family is from Calabria and Sicily, and I'm in touch with both sides. So we message each other frequently, but, and it's always in Italian. Okay. But I just, I think I'm also looking for opportunities to speak it more on a daily basis, because that's really how you.
Okay. So when I send you a bag of taralli from one of the Italian stores over here, you practice, you'll open the box and you'll say taralli.
Taralli, sí.
It's a little bit, it'll be something, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I can read it very well and I can understand it, but like something about speaking, I've become a lot more hesitant in recent years. So I need to change that. That's my goal for, 2021. Yes.
So let me ask you something. We have another person, Ramona Belfiore, asking, where in Sicily is your family from?
They are from a little town, of course, like most Italian Americans, a little town kind of in a mountainous area between Palermo and Agrigento. Okay. That's called Lucca Sicola. Okay. And it's probably one of the closest cities that most people are familiar with, or towns, is Corleone.
Oh, okay.
In fact, according to some of the the historian in my grandmother's town, my family way back in probably the mid 1800s was originally from Corleone, and they came to Lucca Sicola to work as sharecroppers. You can tell we're blue-blooded all the way. Yeah. To work as sharecroppers on the estate of one of the major families in Lucca Sicola. Okay. And so that's my grandmother was a Cortese. That was her surname. Yeah. And so I still have lots of family there.
Oh wow. Yeah, you say blue collar, but I'm reading a book on how the Italian language came to be. And you know how you mentioned earlier, we had a lot of Italian, or a lot of Italians moved to California before Italy was a republic, you know, before we were connected. So I'm reading a book about that, and it's either you were blue class almost, or you were one of the Borgias or the Medici family. So
yes, we were working people, and I'm, you know, very proud of that. You know, they were, you know, just like many Italian Americans and other immigrants, you know, just a huge part of making America what it is today. You know, my grandfather was a steel worker. You know, that steel helped America win World War II and helped build the skyline of New York. So I'm, you know, very cognizant of our roots.
Oh yeah, mine too, in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, where in Pennsylvania?
Bethlehem.
Okay, Bethlehem Steel. Okay, so my grandfather.
Oh my God, we're cousins.
I knew it. My grandfather was in Pennsylvania for 10 years in New Kensington.
Yeah.
Before he came to Colorado. So Colorado, the little town, well, it's a city, the city in Colorado where they live, Pueblo, was called the Pittsburgh of the West because there was a huge steel industry there. But so I still have lots of Gatto cousins in New Kensington and around, you know, around Pittsburgh.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, sharing random things that probably nobody wants to hear. But.
It's okay. It's all good. Here's the thing. Our audience, majority of them are Italian or Italian American, so they're all kind of reminiscing right now. They're all feeling the love, you know.
Where are you from? Which is always the question. It's not, you know, you're Italian. It's like, what, you know, what village? How do you make your sauce?
Right. Like, they're not going to know. It's a tomato town. So, well, I have another question before we wrap things up. What do you hope to accomplish in the coming months with the Italian American Museum of LA?
Well, you know, we certainly look forward to reopening our doors and kind of resuming the activities that we're, you know, best at when it's safe to do so. We also hope to, you know, collaborate with some of our partners, both existing partners and new partners, to kind of serve as a driving force for the recovery of the United States economy and the Italian economy. We do a lot of events with you know, entities in Italy, like last year we did an event with Prosciutto di Parma, for example, of prosciutto producers. And, you know, Italy was hit really hard by this, you know, just as in many ways as we are. So we'd love to be able to kind of continue that. But as I mentioned earlier, we also look forward to partnering with organizations like NOIAW to expand our reach and achieve our missions. And, you know, really kind of become more of the face of Italian America and Italian America in the years to come, because there's a lot more to be realized in our group. There's a lot more to be discovered and a lot more to be celebrated.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say there's still a lot to be discovered.
Yep.
So, but yeah, definitely more to be celebrated. We have one more. I'm going to try to fit in one more viewer comment or question here. Eric Eisenberg asks, what can you tell us about your current St. Joseph's Table exhibition?
Oh, okay. So just shortly before the shutdown orders were issued, we opened a new exhibition called St. Joseph's Tables, Expressions of Devotion, Charity, and Abundance. And it looked at the tradition of constructing altars of food in honor of St. Joseph, and kind of the origins of this tradition in Sicily, to how, you know, it was brought to the United States and how it continues to be practiced. I'm not sure if you're familiar with St. Joseph's Tables. No, because you're Pugliese. But it's a fantastic tradition that basically at the heart of it is not only this expression of devotion to a saint, but it's really the care for the larger community, because everything that's placed on the tables are used to feed people in need. And as the tradition is practiced in the United States today, they often raise money for the poor of the community. And so we opened this exhibition just about a week and a half before the museum had to shut down. And we had communities all over the country participate in the exhibit. And I think there's images of it in the presentation, but we had, you know, New York, New Jersey, Texas, Colorado, Louisiana, Iowa, all send items that are still part of this exhibition, and it's really fantastic. So you know, without tooting our own horn like I just did, you know, many St. Joseph's tables were not able to take place in the nation because of the shutdown orders, the shelter-in-place orders. And so we have, you know, essentially one of the only St. Joseph's tables of 2020 at the museum.
Okay, all right.
It's pretty beautiful. We actually have a virtual tour of the exhibit too on our website.
I was just going to ask, I'm like, do you have it up online anywhere?
We do. We have a virtual tour of it, and it goes through the whole, you know, kind of history behind it. And you know, if you have an extra 5 minutes and you're, you know, want to expand your knowledge and, you know, enough of the celeb scrolling, please, you know, visit our website, or it's also on our Facebook page. And you know, we're proud of it.
I'm not sure why I can't, I'm like, why am I not thinking of this one? Or maybe I've never heard of it, but I think it's because there's already so many others. It's like, oh, I've got to remember Padre Pio's, and then if you're Michael, today's your day, and Michael Day, and this, and I'm just...
You know, it's interesting. It started as something that was conspicuously Sicilian, and now it's become something that Italian-American communities, regardless of what region they, you know, originated from, have started to embrace. And once you've experienced it, you'll want to return every year. So it was honestly, going to St. Joseph's tables was one of my earliest memories as a kid. I didn't understand all of it, but it was like it's a really amazing experience where you see a 200 square foot altar of food and traditional breads and items that are connected to the saint in this practice. So check it out.
Yes, definitely. Definitely will check it out. I mean, like I said, I've got so many others, but I definitely will.
Yes, San Rocco. Don't forget San Rocco.
No, oh my gosh, I got him down too. Don't worry.
Santa Lucia.
Yeah, I don't have that one. I better write that one down on my calendar. No, I just feel like there's so many, but it's also the way that the Italians care about each other. I love how you guys have this exhibition, because it shows, it's a reflection of how the Italians look out for each other, because this goes back to this COVID-19 again. Mm-hmm. And it shows the Italians are pretty darn, and I'm using a nice light word there, pretty darn resilient.
Absolutely.
They take care of each other like they're your own grandmother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And community centric, community minded. Definitely. You know, where it's like, it's not enough that I have enough to eat. It's, you know, it's also important to share, because I may have enough now, but I didn't always, and I'm mindful of that. So it's important to continue to give back and realize like how fragile material wealth can be.
We had a comment, someone said, trying to find all these comments here about today's VE Day and Victorian Europe Day. And earlier in this conversation, in our discussion, we talked about how Italians and Italian Americans were rounded up during the World War. So, but something that just we can reflect on later.
Yeah, yeah. And again, our exhibition, Daigo, which is, of course, an ethnic slur, for people of Italian ancestry, examines this topic, and it's a wealth of information. So if you're interested in learning more about, the internment of Italian Americans, the violations of Italian American civil liberties, and how that played out, especially in California, and just some of the heartbreaking stories. I mean, one woman lost both of her sons to the war, and she was forced to leave her home. Rosina Trovato was her name, and it's just like I feel it is very important to memorialize it, and hopefully, by memorializing it, permitting it never to happen again.
Right. And like I said, I mean, I've been seeing a lot more of these photos the last couple of days, but I'll definitely reflect on this again later today, just to kind of remind me of the history. Because like you said, if, once it's forgotten, then it kind of starts all over again.
Yes. It'll happen.
But anyway, so let's end this on a light note. Let's change it up. Do you need a mascot for your museum? Should you guys adopt an Italian greyhound, for example? Rescue one and leave it in the museum to welcome guests.
We welcome service animals, of course. you know, there's an interesting angle there. Perhaps, you know, there's lots of Italian animal lovers, so maybe we can partner on a future event. My little Italian greyhound, whose name is Santo, of course, he has an Italian name. He has been known to wear IMLA t-shirts and be featured in all kinds of interesting content. So.
It's so cute. I love it. I love it.
I'll have to share with you a photo of him later.
Okay, definitely email it to me. And like I said, I've got 100 ideas for
no, let's continue the conversation. I mean that. We love ideas, and we love, you know, just by collaborating, we are so much more of a force to be reckoned with. We can achieve so much more. And I think we could really be the model for Italian American organizations, not only on the national level, but also on the local level.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Let's look outside, you know?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I always feel like I have to end our discussions, our live streams on a positive, good feeling note. So
good. Very important. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Mariana, we appreciate you for taking your time to join us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Your questions and the messages they messaged us.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing all of you at a NOIAW event soon. Maybe you can see him.
Definitely. Thank you so much, and stay safe.
You as well. You as well. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.